software webinar. This is for BlackBear PTWin users and 5 costly mistakes to avoid when replacing your PTWin system. Hopefully you can hear me okay and you can see our screen. You should be seeing a presentation slide deck with the SMARTGov logo on it. I also have John Bird in the room with me. He is the sales executive here for SMARTGov, and he'll actually be leading us through the webinar today. We're planning on spending 60 minutes today. The audio is being streamed over your computer speakers, or if you need to dial into the conference number, it's located in the webinar window there to your right. Please feel free to chat through any questions that you might have during the webinar. There is a chat function down towards the bottom. Or also you can leave questions for the last about 10 minutes of the webinar. We're saving up to do a Q&A, and we would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. This slide is a picture of our offices here. We're located in Paulsville, Washington, a short ferry ride outside of Seattle. And we are a software products and development company that was founded in 1994. Here's a picture of some of our lovely smiling faces there. Not everybody is included, but you get the picture of the company and what we're doing. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation over to John Bird. And like I said, please feel free to ask questions as you need to.
Thank you, Serenity, and thank you everyone that's online with us today. What we want to do, really, as Serenity mentioned, is just share some of what's transpired for us here at Paladin Data Systems. I'm going to do that on this slide here, and then get into a deeper discussion specific to permitting software, inspection software, and so on, related to BlackBear and PTWin. What happened for us here at Paladin, you know, having been around for a number of years, is that in 2002, one of the local counties here in Washington State came to us and asked if we would build a custom solution for them for managing permits and inspections and so on. And of course, we were happy to do that. We built that in 2002 in Oracle technology. And then that was a custom solution with custom coding and so on. Had no intentions really of productizing that necessarily. But by 3 years later, by 2005, another 8 local jurisdictions in the local area wanted to use that same software, and so we were happy to deploy that throughout 8 more jurisdictions. And then again by 2010, we had 23 jurisdictions, local jurisdictions throughout the Northwest region that started using our custom permitting software. We named it interlocking software, but what we really decided by 2011 is that we had something here of value that really might have larger appeal and larger usage. And so what we decided strategically was to take this to the market and make this a true product and go across country with it. And so what we did is we fully rewrote interlocking software. As I mentioned, it was in an Oracle technology stack, and what we did is we built it in a SQL Server database with C# and .NET front end to it, and we rebranded it completely and we called it SMARTGov, and that was in 2011. Now, at the same year in 2011, what took place is that, as many of you know, the BlackBear company went out of business latter part of 2010. But in 2011, we were able to purchase some of the remaining intellectual property that BlackBear had, and that specifically includes the PTWin source code. And I think that's important, and I bring that up now because what that enabled us to do, and we're going to give a little bit more details on this shortly, but what that enabled us to do was to build a migration script to bring all of PTWin data into our SMARTGov system very comprehensively and precisely. So we're going to talk about that shortly, but that took place in 2011. What that set up for us then was 2012, this past year, where we really rolled this out to the country. And what happened is we doubled our permitting customers completely, and we're represented in all 4 time zones now, so we're all across the country. We converted during that year 20 BlackBear customers from using BlackBear PTWin over to our SMARTGov system. All of those customers had some aspect of data migration from PTWin. And again, since we built that migration script, we are able to migrate that PTWin data for free. And that's one of the values that we do offer, is that we can bring that over at no cost to you. And so 2012 was really quite a good year for us, and that brings us to 2013, where currently we're in process of migrating 3 Black Bear customers right now as we speak, and we have somewhere around 10, and Serenity, I think we're growing even upwards of, maybe 15 or more.
That sounds right.
Black Bear customers that are on deck, so to speak. They're waiting for a slot, and we're starting to schedule places for them in the year to get them migrated. I share all of that with you really to bring you to this observation, is that in the course of what's happened for us here at Paladin in the past 12 to 18 months is, boy, we've learned a lot of lessons. And we've experienced a lot of things specifically with Black Bear that we feel is worth sharing. And so we're calling this 5 costly mistakes, and there's a number of things, but really the 5 that we just want to touch on today within the scope of this hour is one that we encounter quite often, which is the idea that I can wait, and in some cases that's probably okay, as you can wait with your PTWin system before you upgrade. But there's some challenges with it, and we've seen that be a mistake for a number of organizations. We'll talk about that a little bit. The other things that we've encountered is some organizations have lost their PTWin data for a number of reasons during an attempt to migrate or an attempt to create a backup file or what have you, is they have outright lost some data there. The other is losing PTWin configuration. And so your data is one thing in PTWin, but your configuration of how that data interacts within the system is yet another thing, and sometimes that gets lost. The fourth is the possibility of landing on a new system, and it turns out it's an inferior system. It doesn't even have some of the functionality that PTWin had for so many years, and that we've come across a number of times. And then lastly, we'll talk about other systems that you might upgrade to or attempt to upgrade to that have limited upgrade options as you move forward into the future. So it really doesn't give you anywhere to go as you grow, and as this recession begins to recover even better and better. There might be some increased functionality you're looking for. Some of these systems don't offer that. So we're going to talk about all 5 of these briefly. And so to start with, again, waiting too long to replace PTWin, and what I want to describe here is that since December of 2010, when PTWin when Black Bear went out of business, what that meant is that the entire customer base of PTWin users, and I think there were somewhere around 1,300 or more PTWin customers across the country, had 0 support for the PTWin system. What we have experienced, some of you on the phone might have experienced a similar thing, is that your storage space over time on your client machines, on your server machine, as well as in the database layer, the Paradox database layer of PTWin, it begins to get maxed out. And what you might see as a symptom of that is that gradual losses of functionality. You also will see, we've experienced this with some of the organizations we've worked with, is backup files that have encountered some corruptions. And then over time, of course, is these backup files sometimes flat out get lost and are not retrievable anymore. What then that often triggers is an effort to recover the situation or improve the situation or extend the life of PTWin. And a lot of times the effort is made to replace the hardware. And it's not, it's probably the right thing to attempt to do. Again, however, with new hardware, both servers and client machines, comes much more modern operating systems. And herein lies the real conundrum, because PTWin is built on Paradox, most of you know that, which is an older database that I think the last time it was updated was in the 90s. And so what you're dealing with is incompatibility issues with Paradox in regards to some of the more modern operating systems. At the end of the day, what is experienced by a number of organizations is an obsolescence of PTWin. So, the idea of I can't replace it today, or I don't want to move on today, everything's fine, so to speak, I will wait, really can become a challenge when you begin replacing hardware and all of a sudden you might end up losing data. What I'm going to do at this point, we're going to use this format throughout our time today, is I'm going to now try to illustrate some of the the other options here by going over to our SMARTGov system. And I'm going to log on for starters. And notice what I'm doing here. This is a login screen that I've accessed via an Internet Explorer browser. And so just as I would go online to the Internet, maybe to check news or to check stock prices or even to check my web-based mail or even my personal banking online, that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm logging into what is essentially a secure website. And so I'm going to sign in here. And what you're going to see now is this is what we call SMARTGov, and this is a modern application which is fully web-based. And so as you saw that I logged in to the system, just as I would log into any type of like I said, the personal banking or system like that online, is this becomes now a full function application for me. The reason I mention that is sometimes people consider that a cloud-based application or a web-based application means that it has some limited capabilities because they're not used to storing all of their data in a system such as this and be able to have the full functionality. So I want to give you a couple of examples to show how functional a system like this truly can be. For example, this is a very customizable, or I should say personalizable type of system. I'll give you an example. If I come up into this preferences area, me as an individual user, what I can do is customize the data that I'm looking at. For example, I can take a look at a couple of charts and graphs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange a couple of the widgets that are on my screen, and when I save this, my screen is refreshed now based on the preferences that I have selected as an individual. The key to this is that every user within a system, within your organization, has a little bit different role. A permit technician, for example, maybe wants to look at data that's a little bit different than, say, a manager or a director, or even yet than a code enforcement officer. And so based on your role is you can personalize to some degree the data that you're looking at. And so when I say this is a full functionality system, it truly is. I'll give you a quick example too. A system like SMARTGov has unlimited data capability to it. And ultimately what we're doing in a modern system like this is we're taking the hardware issues that I just referenced regard to PTWin, and we're offloading them from your plate. You're not in charge anymore necessarily of managing the server hardware. And so we're managing that for you, and yet you have full functionality. So if I clear out this particular filter that I'm looking at, what you can see is I'm looking at a list of over 9,000 records of permits. That's a lot of data. You have access to all of that. You can filter and sort all of that. I'll give you another example. If I come over into this common area and I click on a parcel repository, within SMARTGov here in this cloud-based application, is I'm storing all of my parcels that are unique to my jurisdiction. Notice I've got over 21,000 parcels right here. I'll give you a third example briefly, is contacts. If I click on my list of contacts that are stored in this SMARTGov cloud-based version, look at it, I have over 200,000 contacts. So what you're able to do in a system like SMARTGov is you're able to fully manage all of your data without any restrictions at all. And the real benefit here is that you don't have to manage anymore the server aspect of a very robust system for managing your permits and your parcels and your contacts and your inspections and all of those things. It's there for you, and you don't have to manage the hardware. That takes us back into the operating system issue. As operating systems are upgraded and changed and the specs change, is you're not shooting at a moving target to keep your hardware and your operating systems to align with a system like SMARTGov. We're managing that for you. Really what you need to focus on in a modern system such as this is keeping your client machines or your field-based tablets or whatever you're using out in the field, is keeping them current with modern browsers. I could be using this system, I'm in Internet Explorer right now, I could be using it in Chrome, I could pull this up in Firefox, I could pull this up in Safari. And so what I'm trying to share with you is the idea that if you're managing your hardware to the specs of modern browsers, that's great. With a modern system like SMARTGov, then that takes care of things for you. I'm going to move back at this point now to our slide deck and just summarize a couple things we've just reviewed here. Is that SMARTGov is a web-based application which gives you a number of advantages in terms of hardware management. You don't have to take care of that anymore on a system level. And what we're doing is we're hosting SMARTGov in the Amazon cloud, and you can imagine the width and breadth of a company such as Amazon. Literally have tens of thousands of software engineers that are managing the cloud platform of Amazon. And as a matter of fact, what that offers is what I call the gold standard service level agreement, which is a 99% uptime guarantee. And we pass that service level guarantee over to you folks as well, which what that means is, again, you don't necessarily have to manage the servers. We'll take care of that. You don't have to worry about the hardware. We're taking care of that and the operating system. And with that comes a peace of mind that 99% of the time this thing's going to be working for you, whether you're logging on at the middle of the night, during the day, or whatever. The other thing I want to mention is that your data is always yours. We don't have any interest in claiming ownership. It's yours. And the other thing that we accommodate very easily in a system like this, a number of state legislatures do require that local jurisdiction data is stored within state boundaries. And we make a copy of your data available on an everyday basis. So if you'd like to pull a copy down every single day and store it locally, you absolutely have the ability to do that. So we're happy to accommodate those things. The other thing, too, with a system like this is, since we're in all 4 time zones, is we have unlimited telephone support to you. So again, you're fully supported. You have all the help that you need. And I'll close with this idea as well on this point, which is that if you prefer to have this data housed locally on your own local area network where your IT group supports it and maintains the hardware, we absolutely can support that type of a deployment as well. We can go either way in terms of that. But I think for a lot of organizations, the cloud type application really begins to make a lot of sense. So with that here, our second costly mistake we've experienced an awful lot is incorrectly migrating PTWin data, which ultimately can pose a risk of potential data loss. I'm happy to introduce one of my colleagues here, Walter Bogart. Walter, if you want to say hi.
Hello, everyone.
I appreciate Walter being with us today. And Walter, you've done this a couple times for us, but it's valuable, I think, to the folks on the line here for them to know what you do and what your experience is with PTWin. You're our developer.
Yeah, I'm the delivery manager over the SMARTGov product line. So a lot of the work I do is ensuring that data migrations, such as for PTWin, come across into the SMARTGov product, and helping the customers transition over into SMARTGov, because there's quite a few differences, as John mentioned, between PTWin and as he demonstrated what you see in SMARTGov. And sometimes that takes a learning curve. So we help transition a lot of the customers that way.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Walter. And I'll just ask you a couple of questions. I mean, one of the things that we know about PTWin, since we own the source code now, and you get to spend time within PTWin every time we migrate a customer, is that PTWin doesn't impose, or at least imposes very little restraints upon data that's input into the system.
Absolutely, yeah, and it comes with the fact that it was developed back in the 90s, and over time as the product evolved itself over the decade and a half that it was around, additional modules were added. So the data was very different through the years, and it had very little constraints or restraints on it. There's also complex data mapping. It's like trying to do an apples to oranges comparison. PTWin's very different from SMARTGov. So we have that well under control and understand the inner workings. And some of the things I always like to do when I bring customers from PTWin across is actually show them from a PTWin perspective where their data is, and how it shows up at SMARTGov, and they get to see that online right there on the screen when I do a webinar with them.
Yeah, that's really handy. And part of the challenge, Walter, as I understand it from you, you've told me, is that so modern systems like SMARTGov do impose more restraints upon data for very specific reasons. You want that relational data to be input in such a way that you can pull out high-level reports and data and metrics and so on. And so when you take a relatively unrestrained system and map data into a restrained system, you have a number of errors, isn't that?
Absolutely correct. And so we do a lot of work on getting that data properly translated over to the SMARTGov system, so that way you can work with an existing permit that may be open and actually move that information and be able to still reference your legacy data per se.
Yeah, and so that's really helpful thing. And when someone is bringing PTWin data into a system, oftentimes, not us, I don't think, because we know what all is there, but oftentimes some of that data is hard to access, hard to view, and at other times hard to even know that it is there in the data, in the data source.
That is correct. See, one of the things too, and I challenge any of our competitors, is that we really do know the data structure. Unlike them, you can take a look at a database schema and make good guess at what it's, where that data and how it works with the application. But we have the internal workings of that since we did have the purchase of Black Bear, and so we really do know how to migrate that data over properly.
Sure, and one of the things you mentioned to me is a lot of times in PTWin data is we have null values where there's maybe a parcel that has no number to it.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, and that's because, in PTWin, you could accidentally hit the next record, and so it creates a entry into the database, but it absolutely means nothing. So we drop a lot of that out of the junk data, basically.
And also you have duplicate numbering. You had another little gotcha there.
Yeah, absolutely. Duplicate numbering are another gotcha things and stuff. And so we're able to, overcome a lot of those issues and bring that data over so that you guys can still reference your data and be successful moving forward within SMARTGov. And we do it very quickly too. I mean, our turnaround times for a lot of these migrations, we're looking on the inside of 3 weeks we can get you up and running into SMARTGov.
Yeah. No, that's great. So what I'll do now is I'm on our SMARTGov system here, and just to try and illustrate a couple of these aspects yet again, Walter, with you here, I appreciate it again. So if I come over into, let me change my view here. If I come over into the administrative area, and if I go to my permit setup, is I can look up, let's say, some lookup values here, and I might have a list of fixture types. And these are, I think some things similar to this are in the PTWin data source, isn't that right?
Absolutely correct. For one instance, I had one client who had a bunch of code enforcement violation codes in their PTWin data, and they were asking, hey, do I have to re-enter a lot of that data back into SMARTGov? No, absolutely not. We bring that data right over into these lookup values, so they can reference it in their code enforcement module very easily.
Yeah. And another one I'll take a quick look at here is if I just open, again, I'm on the administrative aspect of SMARTGov at this point, and if I go into, maybe I'll grab a residential, because I think we're going to see a good example here of what we call custom attributes, which in some regard exists in PTWin as well. Walter, I don't remember what they're called in PTWin. Let me go over to this one here. But here's a list of what we call details, and these are all custom attributes. And this is a place I think you use this quite a bit as well.
Right. Yeah. So there's the additional information tab on PTWin that is configured by a lot of PTWin users of the system, And, we bring that data over into our permitting system, and within SMARTGov, you're able to do searches for this detail information. Examples, you might have, you want to look at all parcels within a flood zone, or you might want to look at all parcels in maybe a voting district. And if you had that configured in PTWin, we would bring it over into SMARTGov, and from your permitting search, you can actually search on those details.
Yeah, that's great. And another quick example would be fees, and we have the ability to have, pardon me, fee schedules and multiple fee schedules attached to specific date ranges. And I think you guys use this as well when you're bringing various static or even schedules over, isn't that?
Yeah, PTWin has the one difference in SMARTGov is, they don't have per se what we call a fee calculator to allow you to make fees work against maybe a particular value in a parcel or a particular value in a permit. So what we do is we bring it over as a static fee, so we preserve, at least from a PTWin migration, that information, historical information.
That's great, Walter. And another thing I'll just go ahead and show while we're here is the idea, you mentioned the idea of pulling, of sorting your data or filtering your data. And so, for example, if I go to this list of all applications, again, there's over 9,000 records here, or various permits that exist in my jurisdiction of data here in SMARTGov, and I can come in and I can sort all of these 9,000 records by coming to a list of custom attributes, and we were looking at that just a moment ago. And these are custom attributes that either my jurisdiction has loaded, or via the PTWin data migration,
correct,
those custom attributes are loaded here as well. So all of a sudden I can sort my entire database off of custom attributes that could exist in the system.
Absolutely.
And while we're here, I'm going to toggle this back to some hard-coded attributes that we deliver along with the system as well, where I can sort or filter my data, say, off of department. Maybe I want to just look at building, and when I add this to my list and search, now my 9,000 records are quickly down to only 5,200. And I can add another attribute quite easily, and maybe what I want is a submitted date. And if I grab a submitted date, what I want is maybe the last 90 days. And if I add this guy to my list and I hit search, now I'm down to 17 total records. And so there's a lot of power that we can do in a robust application like this to filter data against PTWin global attributes or custom attributes or new attributes or what have you. So with that, Walter, I appreciate you sticking with me if you can for another quick discussion here. What I want to do, just to review what we looked at for starters, is that PTWin source code is something that we own now, and you said you set that up screen by screen when we're doing a deployment.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, we do set it up so that way it's easy to reference from a migration standpoint what screens on PTWin and where that shows up in SMARTGov. And in fact, during that validation, I also send out a guide showing you screen by screen where in PTWin with a sample of where it is in SMARTGov.
And that's really powerful. I know that's a quick way for folks to reorient themselves to a new system. SMARTGov's a little bit different, it looks a little bit different, because every system is different. And so as they're coming onto a system like SMARTGov, that's a quick way to orient from the PTWin user face to our new user face in SMARTGov. I think that's really powerful. And quickly, just a couple of tidbits. I think you said the total number of tables that exist in PTWin.
We're well over 100, 120 tables. Not all of them are needed by SMARTGov. For instance, you have user login information. It's not our login information is slightly different. We do bring it over, but also the data types are different. Some are numeric, some are string values. So that's some of the other differences in PTWin versus SMARTGov.
Yeah, excellent. And even attachments too that exist in that PTWin data, we can handle all of that.
We bring all the attachments over as notes and other information, such as if you have images or anything or documents attached to a permit, we can pull those over.
Awesome, excellent. So, and Walter, on a third level here, as far as some of the mistakes, it can be costly. that we have seen or experienced in PTWin regards to configuration, or, as I mentioned here, knowledge transfer, but that's, referring to the configuration of PTWin or the various permit types that organizations have been building out and refining over a number of years in PTWin. Sometimes you move to a new system that's just completely lost or wiped out. Not to mention even reports. There's a great number of reports that people have built over time. What are some of your thoughts on some of these challenges as people are upgrading everything?
So we do bring over a lot of the data over the PTWin configurations and whatnot over into SMARTGov with like a Z legacy type. So that way you can at least reference it, and as you configure SMARTGov, you can actually copy those permits to the new permit type. And then in your searches, as John had showed you, you can filter. Well, you could also filter out the legacy migrated permit types, so that way you don't have to always see it every day on your screen, and save those results. I think he's showing you the screen to do that, and you can easily filter the inactive permit types, is what we call them, so that they won't show up anymore on this listing. And that's some of the things that we do with it on SMARTGov. As far as reports, we have a number of standard reports that you can easily, get configured. We also have an ad hoc reporting tool, which is a lot more robust than what was in PTWin, to be able to provide you those monthly reports that you may be used to.
Yeah, excellent. And, one of the things, too, that I'll go ahead and show as well is, Walter, you've told me that you'll bring in a PTWin configured permit, a permit type.
Correct. With
all of its configuration. And then what that looks like in SMARTGov is you can access that via the administration area, those of you that are administrators. And if I go to a permit setup, and I'm going to find again, let me just grab, how about a commercial new construction, for example. And my screen resolution's giving me some fits here, but you can see on the bottom of my screen, I've got a copy button. And Walter, I think what you've said is this is a great way to take this existing configuration and copy it over to a new permit, but
correct.
Then I can make changes to it
correct.
as well.
That's absolutely correct.
So I can give it a name here, and then now is this where I name it here, and then it gives me a series of options after
correct.
this, right?
Correct.
So if I just give it a name here and a new description, and hit copy. Now I can make some changes to my expiration rules or to my submittal list or so on and so forth. And I think even on a permit level as well, if I just grab a permit, as I can copy a live permit as well. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And here's where I can select how much of the template I want to copy over. So there's really a lot of tools specifically for Black Bear customers as they're moving into a SMARTGov context to be able to leverage their existing configuration and move it forward.
Correct.
So I think that's a really handy feature. And you mentioned some of the reports, and we have some of these built in right here at the bottom of any given permit, a series of reports that are ready to run and merge appropriate data in. For example, a certificate of occupancy could look like this, for example. It merges in all the appropriate information. Now, Walter, in this case, I'm a little bit early to print the C of O, aren't I? So,
correct, that is correct.
So I've got a red notice here that says this isn't valid until the permit's been paid for and all the things are completed. But that's valuable to take a look at. Now, where's my... I'm stuck here on this screen, Walter. I've done something bad. I'm trying to. It doesn't usually happen. I think.
Do an alt tab.
Thank you. I don't know what I did there. So there's a lot of things there that I think is really important. I'll go ahead and move on. We talked about some of the reports. There's the ability to create your own reports as well, this ad hoc that you're talking about.
Correct.
And what I think is important there is, we mentioned earlier, an unrestrained system like PTWin really limits your ability to efficiently create reports. When you have a restrained data architecture such as we do in SMARTGov, then it allows you, and it enables you to associate data in an ad hoc, on-the-fly fashion, so you can pull data out in a much more significant way. Isn't that the idea?
That is correct.
And it's an easy wizard to walk through this ad hoc reporting tool that's built into the system, right into the menu. And so I think that's an important aspect. Also, as far as some costly mistakes that we've experienced or seen other jurisdictions experience is choosing to upgrade their system only to find out that they've selected an inferior system. And some of the things that we've experienced in talking to a number of jurisdictions is that a number of systems don't allow or don't enable plan review. They don't enable routing of tasks and plan review where various people are assigned to certain tasks with workflow and so on. A number of systems as well, believe it or not, don't even provide automatic permit numbering, which of course our system, SMARTGov, does do that, Walter, and that's very configurable too.
That is very configurable. You can configure it however you want to, whatever way you feel comfortable at the permit level, at the permit type, or across the entire system.
Yeah, and that nomenclature or numbering convention is unique to each permit type too.
That's correct.
It could be different for each department.
That's correct.
Yeah, so a lot of flexibility to it. Some systems out there that offer some aspect of permitting or inspections don't offer a licensing module. I think that's important to mention. Or don't support complaints. And certainly, as you've mentioned, some fee calculators is unique to a few systems. A lot of them don't support that. Or even connectors to other third-party systems. And I think in terms of connectors, we support pretty much anything you might need to connect to. Walter, that could be a parcel database, where we load all of their parcels into a repository built right into SMARTGov.
That's correct. That's correct. And it's a process that you can run as needed, ad hoc, per se. Say your county appraiser supplies you some additional data. You can, and they have it updated every 6 months. You can run it every 6 months or however often, every month if you needed to, and update your parcel records automatically. So those are some of the other nice features there.
Yeah, and one of the things too is that creating the transactions within SMARTGov and then connecting that to a financial system. And I'll just show you very quickly that there's a full-blown fee receipting module built into SMARTGov where I can calculate all my fees that might be due, and in this case $2,100 are due, and I can create a receipt. I can give it a reference number, and I can complete this right here within SMARTGov, and that becomes a record in SMARTGov ready for a connector, which then exports this to any financial system. I don't know that we've run across one we can't work with.
No, we haven't run across any that we can't work with. We provide a what's called a receipt extract, so that way you can import it into your financial accounting software and be able to use that data there.
Yeah, and so in terms of connecting a system like SMARTGov, whether it's hosted in the cloud or whether you host it on your own premises with your own IT group, in either cases we can connect this to a variety of third-party applications. And so your data isn't restricted to only stay within the confines of SMARTGov. It can be bridged over into other systems, including GIS, including financial, including an interactive voice response or an electronic document management system. So really the sky's the limit. A lot of exciting things are taking place in that context. With that, just to summarize that, and we're going to move on to our final point here, is that SMARTGov has automated plan review routing, and that's fully configurable to you. And what that means is that you can define which step is assigned to which plan reviewer if there are step dependencies. Some steps are hinged upon a previous step, and you can create those dependencies. And they can route automatically to each end user's work queue. And that's something that we have in SMARTGov, which is a work queue where you can define or you can check to see what's been assigned to you and then go perform those tasks and they automatically drop off your list. There's a lot of configurability built into SMARTGov 2, which helps in this context. That configurability exists on a jurisdiction level, it exists on a department level, and lastly on a user level. And so there are so many things that you can do even over and above what PTWin offered you that's very exciting. And certainly there's unlimited custom attributes. So all of those PTWin attributes that you've customized over the years, they do not have to be lost. We can help you work with those and capture those, including fees and so on. And the last item here, in terms of some costly mistakes that we've seen, is at times some jurisdictions might choose to replace their PTWin system with something that's adequate for today but truly doesn't really offer much to grow with. And we'll just mention a couple of things here in terms of industry trends that we're seeing. Browser-based applications is really where things seem to be moving. Walter, I think that's for whether it's a cloud-based deployment or whether it's an on-premises based deployment. In either case, offering an application like this through a browser, I think, is very common, isn't that?
Absolutely, and even some PTWin shops have a network server client PTWin configuration, and this often requires either having in-house IT staff or an IT expert, or even hiring an IT consultant to help them maintain a network PTWin. The great thing about being cloud-based or internet browser-based is, if your department manager decides to take a road trip, he can go anywhere in the U.S. or in the world for that matter and still log into his permitting system. Now, not that he would want to do that on his vacation, but he has that accessibility to it without having to deal with being back at the home front.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, and that really is one of the other trends that we're seeing is this cloud deployment is becoming more popular. The story that I like to share is that we've been offering cloud-based deployment now for about 2 years, and within the space of that time, when I initially was calling jurisdictions and talking about the idea of a cloud-based application, I got quite a bit of resistance. Certainly, I think you would vouch for that as well.
That's true, yes.
And really, within the space of the past 2 years, we've seen that almost reverse completely, to the extent that we now get calls from jurisdictions saying, do you by any chance offer this in the cloud? So it's interesting to see that. But it's very secure, and that data is being backed up in the Amazon cloud on a regular basis, I think in real time, really.
And actually, if I could interject, there was one quick question regarding the Amazon cloud. Is that data stored only in the U.S., or is it?
That's only stored in the U.S., and we do make up backups and do transactional backups throughout the day to make sure that that data is safe and secure. We also, provide you the ability to download that data at any time of the day you want to. There's a process right there in administration on the SMARTGov that an administrator could download that data at will. So that is your data. We don't do anything with that. In addition, I might also add that with being in the cloud, one of the other benefits that you get is, in PTWin, you installed it on one desktop and everyone used it, and you couldn't play around with it. Well, we provide you a training instance so that you could actually play around with your configurations before you try it in your production environment. And we give that away for as an added bonus to you folks out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Walter. That really is a good point that comes with. In terms of some other industry trends, GIS mapping is really big. I don't think it's going away. It's growing and growing. A public portal, online payments are some industry trends that even if you haven't used those in the past and maybe don't need today, they are things that at some point in time I think we're all going to be adding to our services. And so I'll just show a couple of quick aspects to the SMARTGov suite of how we support that. Hopefully my browser is going to cooperate with me today. And what I'm doing here is I'm loading up an example of a public portal. And this happens to be for a local jurisdiction here in the Seattle area called MuckleTO. And what you can do is you can log in. There's actually a couple iterations. We're working on the next version of this right now, Walter, and I'm pretty excited.
Yes, I am too. It's a lot more, more modern looking interface that really drives the customer to self-service and the permitting process or any other process you have in your jurisdiction.
Yeah, but still I can show you the functionality here, and I think this is really valuable because think in terms of extending your front counter services to the internet in a self-help fashion, which is a 24/7 always open environment. And so, for example, someone could come in and they could look at permits that you have available for them to look at. What I mean by that is you can suppress any permit types from being published on the public web if you would like. You have control over that. And someone can select what type of permit they want to look at based on permit number if they know one, or based on street address or applicant name or so on. Or they can simply just come in and pick a type of permit. So if I grab a single family residential new construction, let's go with that, and search and see what's in the system. What this portal is going to do is then search the entire database and present those records that you've published online. And again, as a public, I can come in and click on one of these, and I can see a little bit of information regarding this permit. The idea is I might want to know, what's in my backyard, so to speak, and I can see if there's a contact or if there's a contractor who's associated to this. Now, keep in mind, you do have complete control over this. If you don't want to publish the contractor or the contacts, you could suppress that. Or, what submittals or what steps are involved here is you can publish those if you would like. You can also present reports on this public portal, and the public can take a look at, your list of pending, well, they can look at inspections, but they can look at pending permits or new permits or expired permits or various things that you might choose to publish. So there's a great deal of information. But further than that is the login capability, and this is what I think is most exciting here, is that an applicant or a contractor can establish an account with you via this public portal, and now this becomes their nexus point or their connection point to you so that they can interact with you. I'm logged in as Joe Paladin Construction, and I can see, for starters, my list of invoices. I can click on this. I can see what I'm owing. I can see in detail what those are item by item. I can select something and make payment right through this public portal if I'd like. If I go back to my list of permits, I can see, for starters, inspections that I've requested or that I have scheduled. Or if I need to cancel one for some reason, I can do that right here, and that notifies the jurisdiction on the back office side of SMARTGov. I can see my issued permits or my open permits, and maybe on an open permit I want to open this single-family residential, and it could be that there is a submittal document that I have in digital copy, maybe from my architect or an engineer, and maybe I want to come in and attach that here, and I can browse to where I have that record and attach it and upload it, maybe with a note. I'll just close that for now. And then what that does on the back office side is it's going to notify the appropriate people via an automatic email that says, hey, this has been updated, and so you know it's taken place. So this really completes the communication loop digitally so that you can extend your services. And I can take a look now at my fees specific for this permit, my inspections. Now, this is not an issued permit yet, so I can't do any inspections yet. But once it's issued, I can request inspections. If I failed an inspection, I could see why. There could be a note there right from the inspector. And so there's a great deal of information here that's available now via the public portal. This could be added at any time, but it's important to understand what's available. And lastly, too, one of the trends that we're seeing is, I mentioned GIS mapping. I'm back on the back office area, and I have these 17 various permits here, and I can send them right to a map. A system like SMARTGov is going to include mapping, and like I say, we've got GIS mapping embedded right here, and I can zoom in and see this information on a geospatial context. This is a satellite image. We provide this right out of the box, no additional cost to you. But it could also be that you have some of your own layers, or your county does, or your GIS department does. For example, a parcel layer. And Walter, this I think is one of the more common ones that we do. Is that about right?
That's correct, a parcel popular, is the most common, because from here you can always, apply for a permit by just clicking on
yeah,
parcel.
That's a great point. So if I hover over a parcel here and I can see ownership, looks like the city owns a bunch of those. Here's one. If I click on this one, owned by a private citizen, and I can create a permit right from here. I could even create a case, which is a code enforcement action right from here. Very simple. It's really just a one-step wizard. I give it a type. Maybe it's a new commercial new, and I hit create, and now I've created a permit. And so there's a lot of automation built into a system like this, and I think that's really what you're going to want to be looking for in terms of where you're going in the future, what capabilities that you have in the future, and so on. And so if we kind of just wrap that up, GIS mapping is very important to be thinking about for the future, a public portal, also some best practices. We've incorporated a number of best practices in SMARTGov, what we call some advanced workflow that we call cycling. And I think there's a lot of exciting things around that. We're actually preparing a case study right now. We'll be doing a webinar, I don't know, another month or so roughly, around the idea of simultaneous plan review, or what we call cycling. And there's some advanced functionality built into SMARTGov that covers that. Also, what I might recommend, I think we, Walter, as a team might recommend, is to consider a phased-in deployment where various things can take place now and then in a few months or even in a few years. You can always add a public portal down the road.
That is absolutely correct. It's like some jurisdictions decide not to do, say, for instance, business licensing, but then the business license clerk down at the other end of the counter realizes, hey, I could use this too. And they eventually can say, hey, configure and start using SMARTGov to do those.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, a system like SMARTGov is something that you can grow with. It's got some things that you might not need today, and I think that's an important consideration to make. At this point, we're coming towards a close here, and I want to make sure that if there are additional questions, that we have a chance for those. Serenity, do we have anything?
Yeah, it looks like there's a few questions, or a couple at least. Somebody is asking about how long the data conversion will take as far as getting up and running with the system, and somebody else was asking along the lines of the same question. They're having some problems with PTWin and are also wondering how fast they can get up and running and what the typical deployment schedule is.
Typically, the deployments run about 2 months, but we've run them as fast as less than 3 weeks, and it really is, to make the client comfortable. I mean, I don't want to rush anything to them because it does become an overwhelming process for them, and so that's why I want to make them feel comfortable at a manageable pace.
So really, we do try to work with what their needs are, and if you are having big issues with PTWin, we can get the data migrated over into SMARTGov pretty quickly for you.
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can just add to it, because I think that is an important question. When we talk about scheduling, it really largely hinges on 2 primary things, maybe 3. One of those is our schedule and what we're up against today, and what's booked. 2 is your schedule, and you have full-time jobs, and what you're up against, and what is on your calendar. And then, of course, 3 is the actual work of the migration itself. But we can be very flexible, and like Serenity said, especially in the context of an emergency, and we really got to get moved over today. We can get your data secured and loaded into SMARTGov, at least as a holding place, pretty quickly. So I just want to throw that in too.
Yeah. And I would also add, again, a challenge to any competitor to try the same in as short a time to be able to successfully do it the first time. We can do it. I know we can.
Yeah, great.
Great. And also there was a question about the GIS that is included in the system. There's 2 base map layers. Can they get their additional layers imported into the system?
They can, and so the 2 base map layers come free right out of the box. One's a satellite image. That's one of the ones I showed you. The other is a street map. I didn't show that one to you, but that comes out of the box. In addition, though, is you might have any number of additional layers that you'd like to be presented on the screen there. It could be a sewers layer or an infrastructure or maybe a critical areas layer, a zoning layer, a city boundary layer, on and on and on. All of those we can bring into SMARTGov, and they're available to you for viewing in a couple of ways, either through shape map or through web services. But the bottom line to you is we can absolutely bring those in. It's really a super powerful way to view your data and to even report on your data, because those images, that GIS view can be saved as an image. It can be then stored on a record such as a permit or such as a code enforcement action. There's really a lot you can do, and I didn't show you the annotation ability that's built into the GIS component. That's something we're happy to show you. But Walter, you guys have a lot of annotating capability built in.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's very simple and elegant too. And so, yeah, that's a great question, and we're happy to work with you on that. We have a package for how we do that in terms of pricing, but yeah, there's options for that.
And just one more question based on the mapping too is, is SMARTGov able to map out inspections on the map at this time?
So yes, in terms of, can I take a list of inspections and show them on a map?
Yes.
And Walter, the answer to that is?
Yes, you can show the inspections. Now, if it's some other process like routing, I don't know. Right now we don't have that capability, but it's something that we've been looking at.
Yeah, for routing, that's true. But as far as putting it on a map, absolutely. And you can put, 15 or a dozen or 4 or however many, and you can view those on a map. You can view
the address information, and
yeah,
absolutely.
Great.
Anything like that on a map. So that's good question. And if I just add too, because this is exciting to me, so I'm going to share part of our roadmap for the public portal, Walter, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Is that we're in process of sometime this year, possibly this summer, of adding a mapping capability to the portal itself. So again, if someone's just taking a look at what's in my backyard, so to speak, a great way to see that is on a map. And so you guys are adding that.
Yes, that is true.
So, perfect. And it looks like that was all the questions that we had today.
That sounds great. So I'll just conclude with a couple of slides here. What I'm calling here the SMARTGov Advantage, which, again, in the context of costly mistakes, there really are some important considerations. I hope that we've been helpful to you. In terms of deciding when to replace your PTWin system, we recognize that there are budget limitations, and sometimes we can only do what we can do, and that's fine. But do keep in mind that there is a point where waiting too long can be a costly mistake. And on the SMARTGov side, we try and mitigate that with the idea of this gold standard 99% uptime type of system, which really manages all of the hardware for you and takes into account those challenges you're facing on the black bear side, and it kind of eliminates them. And keep in mind too, in terms of your data, your PTWin data, I've never met an organization, a local government organization, that didn't highly value their data. That's data that's evolved over time. It is who you are. It is what you've done. In some cases, it even is court-type records, depending on what's taking place. That's super important, and we recognize that, and that's why we purchased the PTWin source code. We can migrate that, we believe, better than anybody else can, and of course, for us, it is free, straight into SMARTGov to migrate that, so please keep that in mind. Also, as far as your PTWin knowledge transfer, that configuration, all of the ways you've been doing business over time, you might want to change some of those, you might want to improve some of those, but you certainly don't want to lose them. And we're able to help you with that and to load that into SMARTGov. And we do have some quick start documentation, which really gets you moving quickly. And as Walter was saying, on a screen-by-screen basis to help get orientated is super important. In terms of replacing PTWin, you've got to pick the right system, of course, and do be aware some inferior systems do exist. It's one thing for me to tell you I think SMARTGov is the right system for you, but what I'd really offer to you is references. We have tons of references. We are happy to put you in contact with actual PTWin users who have migrated over to SMARTGov and talk to them. See, let them tell you if it's working and how well it's working. We're happy to provide that. And also for future-proofing your investment. SMARTGov is a system that you can grow with. It's got things that you've probably not been using or maybe don't think you need today. But at some point you might, and we want to make that available to you. And so that's really the SMARTGov advantage. We're trying to take care of some of these major issues and offload them for you in a make-sense kind of way. With that said, there's more information. I mentioned to you a couple of upcoming webinars that we're working on right now. I'm really excited about the compliance webinar we're working on for some organizations in the state of Arizona. They have a bill there, a state bill, 1598, which requires time frames and on licenses and permits, and our system is doing a really good job to help manage a lot of that. We're also working on a case study out of Kitsap County here. This is our originating organization, our original permitting customer that we built our technology for way back in 2002. They're, of course, a user of SMARTGov at this point as well. They've moved over to SMARTGov. And we're working on an exciting presentation with those folks, and we'll be putting that into a case study and doing a webinar around it. And then lastly, there's a number of these we're working on, but the three I want to just foreshadow here is the last one is Portland, Texas, that have a number of departments, and so they're fully using this as a cross-departmental system. They were also a PTWin user. We want to talk a little bit about how it's been for them and talk about recurring inspections and so on. So a lot of exciting things. You can get updated on these as we publish some information on our website. You can see the website there, smartgov.paladindata.com. Please do reach out to us if you have any additional questions or ideas. So you've got a phone number there, both for myself, John Burt, and for Serenity, as well as emails. We'd love to chat with you, and I hope you have a great day, and I hope this was useful to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.